Welcome. I'm Kevin Miller. This is a podcast for your personal evolution. In this episode, we choose our responses and they define our lived experience. Here's a quote. Forces beyond your control can take away everything you possess, except one thing, your freedom to choose how you will respond to the situation. This is a quote by Holocaust survivor Viktor E. Frankl that headlines a new book that's titled Dealing with Feeling. Use your emotions to create the life you want. The book comes from my guest in this episode, Marc Brackett. Marc is the founding director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence and a professor in the Child Study Center, Yale School of Medicine at Yale University. So Marc's research for over 25 years has focused on the role of emotions and emotional intelligence in learning, decision-making, creativity, relationships, health, and performance. The quote from Viktor Frankl that came from his time in a concentration camp and what Marc has devoted his life to is saying that no matter what happens to us, we get to choose how we respond. My experience of humanity is that no matter what happens to them, us, even great traumas, tragedies, and victimizations, what harms us more than the incident or the event is how we conceive of it and how we ultimately then respond, choose to respond. And my concern is that culturally we've come into a place where we just don't really believe this, or we don't want to. We feel it's our right and it's just to respond to our pain with pain. And to say otherwise is actually offensive. Looking at the mental health stats today, I don't think this perspective is helping us, that it's working. Well, this is a conversation you're about to hear with Marc Brackett. Marc previously authored the best-selling book, Permission to Feel. And most recently, along with Pinterest co-founder Ben Silbermann, Marc and his team co-created the Apple award-winning app, HowWeFeel, that was designed to teach emotional skills and enhance our well-being. So next I bring you Yale director and professor Marc Brackett, a deep discussion on emotions and our opportunity in not reacting from our pain, but responding from our choice. Marc, you start off your book with a quote from Viktor Frankl. Mm-hmm. I am almost embarrassed how often I bring his name up in conversations and on these shows. But the quote that you use that I want to reference real quick, forces beyond your control can take away everything you possess except one thing, your freedom to choose how you will respond to the situation. Your freedom to choose how you'll respond to the situation, to any situation. So my first area of interest is a big view of that of do we, as a culture, do we really believe that? I'm a little afraid we don't.
Well, you answered the question. That's not good, right?
It's fair. It's fair, but it just, I want your take on that because that's what I burden myself with.
I don't think we believe we do. And that's why we have such a dysregulated society.
Yeah.
But I know that we do have the choice to choose in terms of, or let me say that again. We do have the choice in terms of what we do with our feelings at any given moment. We just haven't been told how to fill that space.
So this book, again, I feel like it's an elementary and almost redundant question, but it feels like the impetus is not just the information, but do you feel like you often find yourselves that your primary goal as an evangelist for emotions here is just to get people to actually accept and believe that?
Yeah. So, the book is called Dealing with Feeling. And the reason why it's called that, well, A, it rhymes. I kind of like that. But B, is that most people have not learned how to deal. And we know that from our research. When we asked tens of thousands of people, what did you learn about emotion regulation? First, they're like, what the heck is emotion regulation? But once we define it even, and actually it works better when we do define it, because when we say exactly what it is, then people are absolutely certain they didn't get any education in it. And so, people just, were not taught these things. And it's clear because if you look at the mental health of our society, we have more anxiety, depression, more violence than we can handle.
We talked a minute ago about a past student of yours that was on the show, Scott Barry Kaufman.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a show with him, I don't know, a few months back, and we talked a lot, of course, about a victim mindset.
Yep.
I interest myself with that in regards to emotions that we, and I'll come to emotional intelligence in a second, but before that, even that in understanding emotions are out there, well, emotions exist. That's the point.
Well,
that
they do.
I feel like I and most others looked at them like, okay, there's emotions floating around there, and I might catch one, kind of like COVID. And then I'm trying to deal with this thing that has attacked me instead of maybe I have some responsibility for the emotion. Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, there's a lot there.
Yeah, I know.
So I think a couple of things. One is life is a roller coaster ride of emotions. Period. It just is. There are great days. There are bad days. There are sunny days. There are rainy days. There are people who love you. There are people who hate you. This is life. And so we're going to have emotions whether we want them or not. The question is, what do we do with those emotions? Do we ignore them, deny them, suppress them, act out, yell, scream, drink them, avoid them? Or do we learn how to use them wisely with research-based strategies to help us achieve our goals in life? I'm interested in the latter. I spent a huge part of my life knowing nothing about emotional intelligence, allowing my emotions to have a lot of power over me. I see millions of people, billions of people allow their emotions to have power over them, and they're miserable. And life doesn't have to be that way.
Okay, you just said kind of a list. We suppress, we avoid, we're controlled by them. In the culture today and in the work that you do, what would you say is the predominant response we have today towards emotions?
Well, in my research, what I found, the top ones right now are avoidance. It's a big one. Eating is another big one. Alcohol is another big one. And quite a bit of negative self-talk, self-criticism, being a self-saboteur.
Okay, so when you're not on your game, which one are you most likely to fall to?
All the above.
Fair. Okay. Okay. All right.
I mean, I'm a victim of my childhood, too. I've learned to unlearn, but it's in my DNA. So I have to fight it a lot, but I want to avoid difficult conversations and difficult people. I want to avoid feeling, strong negative emotions. I definitely, it was interesting now that you're making me think about this, is that it really is very context specific. I actually diagnosed myself with kind of a social eating challenge because I do so much public speaking, and I go out for dinners, and like today I was having a lunch with people, and I think people expect me to be the entertainment. I'm the guest speaker, and so I get anxious without even realizing it, to be honest, and I'll eat my feelings. I'll just sort of I'll stuff my face so that I don't have to say anything. And now I'm much more aware of that. And before I even go into a meal, I'll be like, Mark, you don't got to eat your feelings. You can just sit there and breathe, and you don't have to be the entertainer. So it's interesting that you thought about that because, avoidance for me is with difficult people. Eating is social kind of anxiety. So it's situational.
Tell me your thoughts on. I look at my past as being. I interpret myself as really emotionally unintelligent.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard about, especially as I got into counseling and started the journey as of recent years and whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't resonate with suppressing necessarily. Avoiding, I guess so, but I really felt, and I'm open to counsel. That's why I'm asking. I almost felt primarily just ignorant. I didn't I wasn't exposed to a lot of emotions in my childhood unless they were positive. If they were negative, those are just things we got to fix. So I learned, okay, we don't go there. And then I'm the consummate, guy and athlete and whatnot. And there wasn't a place for them. And I just feel like I was really ignorant. However, with future manifestations, I'm going to guess that I was, suppressing and avoiding. They were there, but I was just so unconscious. Does that feel relevant?
Yeah, I mean, that's more like the repression aspect of suppression when it's not conscious, when you're just sort of
Okay.
actively repressing, which is also very common. All these maladaptive strategies are learned.
Yeah.
We're not born with like a repression button, or a, eat your feelings button or drink alcohol button. We may have, some tendencies based on our biology, but, we witness it. And then it seems to become the strategy that we end up using.
How many people would you say, I guess this is an emotional intelligence, though not a health question. So from an emotional intelligence aspect, percentage ballpark of people that are unhealthfully dealing with their emotions and they have no idea. That's where I put myself, and those who kind of know, but they're still falling to it. So it's still a conscious question. How many are even remotely conscious?
I would put probably 60 to 70% of people in that dual bucket. The people who are, not consciously aware or unconscious, or not aware, basically, of their maladaptive ways of dealing with emotion. And then there are people who are aware, but feel hopeless and can't do anything about it. And so they watch themselves eating their feelings. They watch themselves drinking their feelings. They watch themselves actively, avoiding people, but they feel powerless in changing that.
Yeah. It was actually, if my memory serves, I think chapter 5 or so of your book. I think I've got notes on it. Mm-hmm. And you talked about, no, it was chapter 6. You listed out some emotions: anxiety, fear, stress, pressure, worry, and overwhelm. And I'll address where you reference them and why, but I'm pulling them out now because you're only the second person who I have ever heard the differentiation of anxiety and fear. And that's where my question here is. My friend Jake Eagle, longtime therapist that I work with, had pulled out, and again, I just read it out of your book and I hadn't seen it other than Jake, that anxiety is, well, I'll just ask you. You're the guest. Anxiety and fear. Just take those two and tell us your differentiation of those.
Yeah. Well, anxiety is around perceived uncertainty around the future. I get anxious about when I'm unable to make predictions. What's going to happen? When COVID hit, like the university shut down, when's it going to open? You just sit there kind of ruminating, like, I don't know. And just, there's so much uncertainty and you have no control over it. Fear is much more real. It's in the moment. It's impending danger. And they're just very different. I always joke, I live in the countryside in Connecticut now. And, I grew up in a suburban town, then I lived in New York City. And now I live in rural kind of Connecticut. And the other day, well, this is a couple years ago now, there was a bobcat, like literally staring at me inside my office door at home. And I just said, like, that's it. We're dead. We're moving. Dogs are dead. We're not bringing the dogs outside. I'm never going outside again. We're selling the house. Right. But that's because I perceived it as a threat. That's the danger. It wasn't anxiety ridden. It was just fear, which is different from stress, which is different from pressure and overwhelm. These are all nuanced experiences that we need to define clearly.
Okay. So with that said, thank you. I am curious of your perception of the average person. I know it's a broad brush, but here we are, you and I are sitting in America, different states, but in America. My guess, my bet, my perception is that we are in the least, to a degree, the least fear, meaning actual physical danger for the most part, we're maybe in less than ever. And yet our anxiety, our perceived, worries about things are ever, ever higher. Thoughts on why?
Well, I think it's because there is a lot of uncertainty in our society where we live right now. There's climate crises, there's wars, there's economic uncertainties, there's school shootings for high school students, there's 24/7 news cycles, there is doom scrolling. And so life is different these days for people. And when you're getting constantly bombarded by whether it's information or misinformation, it's activating. And so I think that many of us are living with cortisol pumping in our bodies way longer than it should be. And we're experiencing that chronic stress or chronic anxiety or chronic overwhelm. And we have to either, get rid of all these things out of our lives or learn how to, balance it. But we need to shift. Otherwise, I think people are going to be falling apart faster and faster.
Okay, my concern is even when we say that, okay, fear is real danger, the bobcat. For me, it would be a bear. We get those every once in a while. Okay, so real danger or, something of more of a physical nature for the most part. But my guess is that it feels like the pulse of the culture right now is that most people, even if they heard the definition you just gave, would say, hey, my quote, anxiety, there's not a bear or a bobcat or something, it's a worry, but it is fear. Because if that political party makes that decision, it's, we're going to go to war, or I'm going to lose my rights, or X, Y, Z. I mean, is there a concern that everybody thinks their anxiety is a real, there's the movie title or the book title from, can't remember the guy, A Real and Present Danger.
Yeah. I mean, everything is about appraisal. So that's just something we have to know. It's my perception of my reality. Emotions are not things. Emotions are phenomenon that occur based on my appraisal. So, for example, when I told my neighbor about the bobcat, they were like, oh, just clap your hands, bang a pot, and it'll disappear and then never come back. Or put some deer urine around your property and you'll never see the bobcat again. And I was like, oh, okay. So the more information I got, right, the less I became fearful of it. Point is that it's all about perception. And so you and I could both be on a roller coaster ride and you're thinking, Mark, I'm going to die. And I'm thinking, this is the most boring roller coaster I've ever been on. The roller coaster doesn't cause you to have fear or me to have excitement. I've had experiences in roller coasters or on roller coasters that have brought me joy and excitement. And you've had ones that have terrified you. And so I think it's so important for people to understand that because, our emotions are experiences that are accumulated across our development. Does that resonate with you?
100%. And I want to dig in there because I experience friction trying to communicate that without minimizing somebody else's feelings. So let's take the bear, which is a real thing that's happened at my home plenty of times. And in the family, there can be one person and the bear comes out and I'm going to say an autonomic response. Their physiology is excitement.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is awesome. Get a camera. It's nothing but excitement. And somebody else is nothing but a little bit of terror.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
yeah, they both point to it and go, oh my gosh, that's scary. And they go, oh my gosh, that's exciting. Well, apparently that is nothing. It's just a stimulus and you are creating that. Okay. Just to say that though, and especially if you take that to somebody's trauma, feels incredibly invalidating. And my question is around how to hold that aspect of it. Apparently it's not the thing. For the most part, it's us creating it.
Well, it's the relationship to the thing, right? It's the relationship to the stimulus. And some of us have different relationships to different stimuli. And so if you're abused in life, your relationship to people who look a certain way, who behave a certain way, that will trigger you, understandably. And so you don't want to be dismissive of that. It's not that it doesn't matter because it's perception. I just want to say that clearly. It matters. I think what matters most is that we have well-being in life, and that we learn how to either avoid those triggers if they're avoidable in life. Like I don't have to live in the country if I'm afraid of bobcats. I can just move to the city. I'm not going to see a bobcat. Or I can learn about bobcats and change my relationship to them and know how to deal with it. And, that's an easier example. But in a relationship example, um, I think what's interesting about what we're getting at is that we want to be really careful about how we think about reappraisal as a strategy, because I can also be gaslighted by you.
Mm-hmm.
You can be so manipulative that you force me to like second guess myself. Like, come on, Mark, you're not really scared. Really, Mark, you're a 56-year-old black belt in martial arts. Like, why would you be scared? You make me feel bad about it. And then I might believe that I'm bad because I'm scared. And that's not healthy regulation. That's manipulation. That's not good. But at the same time, I'm jumping around with examples here, but if I have difficulty with certain people, let's say I was a victim of abuse, which I was, by the way. I was terribly abused as a kid. Um, I do have a choice in terms of moving forward and having the ability to have trusting relationships. I can overly attach to my experience as a child and have a lot of mistrust, which will make my life really difficult. And I would hate to see anybody, because of a traumatic experience, not live the life they want to live. I would hope they would get the support they need to help them move through that experience, not deny it, but move through it in a way that is healthy and helps them achieve their goals. So that's a lot, but does that make any sense?
Again, this is one of my primary areas of interest, and this is not a linear discussion. I'm going to go around as we hit on topics.
Very circular today.
Well, there it is. So be it. In looking at, well, you speak to it, that to a degree you're looking at, okay, what is hopefully your response, not your reaction to the emotion. And then I think you actually use the word, and it's one that I really like. Is it constructive for you? Is when a wild animal comes out of the woods and you're terrified and you decide to sell the farm or the house or whatever and move to the city, is that okay? Or is it not, because you adore this place? You know that you can do the research and find out there's been very few people that have been mauled by a bobcat. And, do you want to change that or not? Again, I like that. Is it constructive from your abuse that you don't trust anyone, or that you continually attach to abusive relationships or whatnot? So we're back to context. Go ahead.
No, what you're making me, just go to is that it's a learned response.
Yeah.
I learned to mistrust someone who was mean and cruel to me and abusive. And so I have to unlearn that, in terms of not everyone is going to treat me that way. I may think people are because of my experience, which is the challenge. To keep it even simpler, one of my favorite examples of this is flying. I used to be a very nervous flyer. The turbulence would make me really panicky, and I didn't know what to do about it. Even though, I would fly a lot, and I would just be, have an extra beer or something. And then my cousin, who happens to be a pilot, he said to me, "Mark, did you know there's never been an accident in the air because of turbulence?" I'm like, "What? You kidding me?" Like as soon as like boom, 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 I'm thinking like we're dead. It's going to fall. The wings are going to fall off.
Isn't it the old series Lost? Isn't that the premise of how they have turbulence and shatters the plane?
I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
I think so. Anyways, yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, well, it's a TV show, not a reality.
Fair, yeah.
But the truth is, maybe if it gets struck by lightning or something like that, or but turbulence itself is just air pockets that the plane can go through. And so every time I'm in a plane, which is 30 times a year, and there's turbulence, I take a deep breath and I'm like, "Mark, remember what your cousin told you. There's never been an accident because of turbulence." And then I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then I'm all of a sudden fine. And so if you learn, like that works for me. For some reason, like the authority on flying, who's my cousin, has definitively told me that, I'm going to be okay. And so that's my go-to strategy for dealing with that fear. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And
And
I appreciate it because you're saying, as you do say in the book, very eloquently, I think, that the emotion's not the bad guy. The emotion's not a big problem. It's your, this is my word, it's your sober response or mature response, or I think you even said intelligent response to it that matters. So even here, what I feel like your message is, part of it in the book, is I'm not here to, well, in your case, to eradicate forever your fear of turbulence or your trigger, or that it gives you emotion. You're not there to eradicate it. You're just there to manage it, to moderate it.
yeah, and eventually it might go away unless, now when I feel a little turbulence, I look around, everybody else is reading their books and on their phones and nobody else is freaking out. So I'm like, okay, and my regulation is much quicker than it ever used to be. Years ago, okay, there's never been Chinese, I have to like work myself into it. Now it's kind of like, okay, it's faster. So it does get better with practice and time, for sure.
Okay, another big topic in this of mine is identity. Who Kevin is, who Mark is, how we see ourselves.
Yeah.
I don't know if my question is how often, but I feel like there's a large amount, and for myself and culturally, a large amount of our emotional struggle, challenge, dysregulation around, back to anxiety, perceived threats to our identity. That's been some of my biggest struggle, Mark, especially in intimate relationships, to realize, oh my gosh, my anxiety, I've been in counseling for it, and it's in regards to a relationship, and realizing it's just my identity. I'm not at physical risk. I'm not at financial risk. I don't really know what is at risk. What the hell is wrong with me that I'm so amped up, to come to find that I feel like a lot of it's just my own sense of an identity, which from that I extrapolate, apparently I have a fairly fragile identity. I think I'd like to address that. Thoughts?
Go back for therapy. I'm kidding.
Yeah, agreed. Well, I'm here. I'm getting free therapy. Keep going.
Identity is a big topic. And so like there's your gender identity, your identity as, a counselor, my identity as a professor, and my identity as a husband, my identity as a martial artist. And I think, all those things play a role for sure. But in terms of anxiety, what I would say, and where my brain is going with this right now, is that certain identities in our society are frowned upon. And so if you don't feel like you can be your true self, it's going to cause anxiety because you're never going to be certain about how you can show up in the world. And I think that's, for me, the real issue that is problematic in our culture right now, is that my research shows three things that people want around them in terms of other people. And this is the results of 70 studies across the world. People want to be non-judged, like, stop. Thank you for keeping your opinion to yourself. Stop judging me. Yeah. The second is people want to be listened to, not talked to and told all the time. And the third is people want people to show they care and have empathy and compassion. And so for some reason or another, there's a lot of people in our society right now that think it's their obligation to tell people who they should be, to be very judgmental, to, dismiss certain identities and cultures, to not listen to anything that they have to say because they don't value them, and to show no concern or empathy or compassion. That's the real issue for me.
Okay.
I took you in another direction, maybe.
Well, no, I literally had the word, empathy in here in regards to emotions, thinking it was a part that you had written in the book. And I thought, having empathy for myself. I've been incredibly, judgmental of other people's emotions, and then realizing, oh, I start with me, incredibly judgmental of my own.
Correct.
Not much hope if I'm judgmental of myself. So giving myself empathy, what does that look like so that I can give others? And that's been finally I'm not going to say a magic pill, but that's what's helped my lack of empathy with others, was finally figuring out how to have it for myself. Not an excuse. I still struggle with that. I don't want a crutch or a cop out for myself, but empathy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, my research shows that only about 35% of us report having grown up with someone who was, as I call it, their Uncle Marvin, someone who allowed them to be their true selves. Only 35% of us report having an adult in our lives when we were young that was non-judgmental, empathic, and good listener. That's pretty startling and unfortunate. And it predicts a lot of good things about our lives if you have had that in your life. It predicts your adult ability to regulate your emotions. It predicts your mental health, your physical health, your sleep quality, your purpose and meaning in life, your life satisfaction, really kind of critical life outcomes. But a lot of people come up to me after I give speeches. I just gave a speech, actually. And, people, actually, it was classic. I was giving a speech to about 400 parents just now. And one father raised his hand and he goes, well, is it why do I have to be that person for my kid? Why can't somebody else be that person? And I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. I'm like, so you're resistant to being non-judgmental, empathic, and a good listener to your kid? Can you tell me more here? It's interesting. I mean, there's so much fear. And I think the fear comes from people not having the skill. They don't know what to say. They're not really sure what to do. Even though my research shows that nobody wants anybody to tell them what to do. Nobody wants to be fixed. Nobody wants like that special advice. People are really looking for people to just be present and supportive. Now, the reason why I'm telling you all this is that at some point, if you didn't have it, you have to make a conscious choice. You can dwell on that and feel bad about yourself forever, or you can say, all right, now I can be this to myself. And so that's where I was going with this, is that at some point you got to look in the mirror and say, Mark, I love you, man. Mark, you got to stop. I'm going to stop judging, your height, your weight, your nose, your hair. Mark, I'm going to have some self-compassion. You got to do it because no one else is going to do it for you in some instances. And so I think it's super important that we help people develop that capacity.
That's my story, Mark. I don't know how many years having kids and being a dad, and I understood the concept of compassion, and I wanted to feel it, not just be it. I mean, I could act it out better, but I wanted to not be performing and actually have it, and had no concept of my lack of compassion for me. I set myself over here and actually gave myself permission, kind of unconsciously, to be my own drill sergeant. And man,
you don't want to be too hard on yourself, but you gotta push yourself.
Sure, compassionately. Fair.
There you go.
Okay, so here we are with emotions, and you saying, look, here they are. Brene Brown's got her 87 emotions, an atlas of the heart.
Yeah.
They're okay. It's you doing what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to feel them, dealing with feeling. Use your emotions to create the life you want. I mean, you say it right there. Yet we've got to be, my word, responsible, or I like the word personal agency for how we, not react. And I always like that, to not react, not to boom, react, but to respond. And I was thinking as I was reading part of your book and thinking, I think we would destroy the entertainment industry, movies and TV shows, if we had emotionally regulated people, because that's what the drama is. I've seen some lately, and maybe it's part of my own process here. And I just wear myself out watching it, because it's just like, this is a show about emotional dysregulation. If they were dysregulated, there'd be no show. And I guess we'd have to go do something.
Well, I mean, are you talking about like reality TV?
No, even some of the series that you see are a lot. Gosh, I remember watching. It's been a while now. This is going to piss somebody off probably, but the show Suits.
Uh-huh.
I appreciated that, but at some point it felt like it kept ramping up, and it was just contention after contention of people blowing up with their perceptions and blaming it, everything that they felt, everything, blaming it all externally. It was all externally. There was very little that I perceived of ownership of, wait a minute, I'm an adult. I've had the opportunity to, as you talk about, to regulate my emotions and not just fly off the handle. And it felt like it was the fly off the handle show in my own biased perception.
Yeah, I mean that's acting, so well, it's fine. And I think that's if it's good acting. Like Meryl Streep is probably the most emotionally intelligent person I've ever met. I mean, just think about how skillful she is at displaying emotions. Um, I don't see a problem there, to be honest. I think that's reality. I was I was with a bunch of third graders last week because I work in schools too, and we had this little game I was playing with them. Imagine a world where everybody knew how to regulate their emotions, and this one kid goes, "That would be boring."
Yeah, my
And I loved it. I thought that was a fabulous response. And so then, but then another girl in the class, she goes, "Well, that's never going to happen because people are always going to make mistakes. People are always going to get triggered and activated by something." And it just led to this really cool classroom discussion about emotion regulation. Just loved it. And so the I think the real point here, and someone actually at the end of my speech just a minute ago, she came up to me and she said, what did she say? She said something around the world, like around, there'd be no, like it would be just like a boring world if everybody was emotionally intelligent. And I said, that's a misconception about what you think emotional intelligence is about.
Okay.
Emotional intelligence is not about being perfect. Emotional intelligence is about learning how to use our emotions wisely to achieve our goals, which means that when I see an injustice, I feel angry and I'm strategic about how I can find a way to deal with that injustice to make change happen. That's not going to always be being nice. Sometimes you're going to have to be really direct and assertive. And so I think people just think that emotional intelligence equals nice, and that is not true.
Okay, let's go with that.
Sure.
If we're all just emotionally, well, okay, no, if we have that myth that emotional regulation, emotional intelligence is just being even keel. I'm a monk, not bothered by anything.
Yeah.
That would be boring. Can we though? Well, here's a personal practice, Mark.
Yeah.
If you say something that I take offense with, I could be Mr. Zen, nothing against Zen, but conception as an analogy, or I could express that I don't like that. I'm upset. How much of a difference though? Instead of saying you, Mark, angered me, you made me angry.
Yeah. You can't.
Isn't it more relevant to say I'm angering myself with my perception of what you said? I don't like that. I feel like it crosses the boundary. I'm really upset. I'm just upset. I'm not blaming you. I'm not putting it again external. And you get the chance to say, well, screw you, or to say, gosh, really, why? And be curious. And we get the chance to connect or not without me blaming you, which is almost 100%, almost it's high likelihood of disconnect. And we just hang up and go our merry way.
Yeah. I mean, firstly, you can't, the whole "you made me feel this thing" feels very 1970s, I don't know, psychology to me. I just don't think we don't want to say that. Where my brain is going now, since we're going in circular motion today,
Yeah,
is the emotion regulation is about learning how to use all emotions wisely to achieve a goal. Just want to put that out there. And the assumption is that it's always about down regulating. I'm pissed and I want to be calm. And that is one goal, but it's only one goal. And maybe I'm pissed and I want to stay pissed. I just don't want to be a jerk about it. And I think about this all the time in terms of, as a professor and a leader of a center, I have to give people feedback all the time, on grant proposals, on research papers. And I could read a paper, let's imagine, and it's really terrible. Like, I'm just sort of like, ugh, cannot believe like someone with a PhD wrote this paper. It's terrible. Like, I'm embarrassed. There's no way that we're getting this published. This is terrible. And I can go into that meeting and I'm angry. And I'm both disappointed and I'm angry. I'm like, this is not, I had much better expectations and this is ridiculous. So I go into the meeting, let's say it's you, Kevin. And I'm like, Kevin, like, I don't understand what the hell got into you. Like, how could you write a paper like this? I'm like, this is frightening. I'm just letting you know this right now because like the thought that you got a graduate degree in psychology and thought that's the way to write a paper makes me out of my mind. And I just don't even know what to say or do about it. Someone would say, well, Mark, that's being authentic. That's what I want to, that's how I feel. And that's what I'm going to do. How do you feel about that?
But that term authentic is rife with issues. Yeah, I play with that or just being honest. I'm just being honest. Just being honest. Yeah, well, keep your honesty to yourself, please.
Yeah. Okay, so because it was like it's disrespectful, it's very kind of like attacking, but I could have the same feeling, and I could be, Kevin, thanks for letting me read the paper. I just want to be honest with you. I was disappointed. I just thought that the writing wasn't as crisp as it could be. And I thought the structure could really use some work. I really think that if you spent a little bit more time thinking about it, I wrote a few notes in the margin for you. I want to give you another chance to work on it and then come back and then we can look at it again. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, I feel connected. Like really, I feel like you care. And exactly. We're back to criticism or constructive criticism. And I feel like, oh my gosh. And then to that degree, if I want it to be good, if I'm not just protecting my ego, if I really want it to be good, then thank you. Thanks.
There you go. So there's a difference. I had the same emotion.
Yeah.
I'm actually like, I'm pissed and I'm disappointed, but my regulation strategy really makes or breaks the relationship and makes or breaks my leadership, because how I communicate my feelings to you will drive whether or not you think I'm a jerk, whether or not you want to work hard, or whether or not you want to say thank you and go work harder.
Yeah.
I think to me, that's like the best kind of example for people to hear and see around healthy regulation. Same goal, but way different strategy.
So that strategy, I continue to come back to connection. I still have kids in the house and am often feel faced with, okay, here's something that's a boundary crossed that I want to address for their sake and for mine. How do I do it and retain, you could say respect, but there's some people have baggage around that. I do like that word, but how do I retain connection? How do I deal with it without being a pushover, but also not being just militant? I see rebellion often, especially from teen kids, how do I hold both or some middle ground and address it? But just as you did, I can address it and disconnect, or I can address it and hopefully retain connection. I don't have a formula for that. Maybe you do, but I find myself grappling.
It's never perfect, but you can create norms. We can say, we both want to feel respect. And so I want to show you what it looks like for me, and you can tell me what it looks like for you. And we'll come to some kind of agreement about how we respect each other. Because for you, respect might mean, when you call your kid down for dinner, they don't wait 25 minutes. They don't dilly-dally and they come down for dinner. That means something to you because you worked hard in cooking the food. You want them to eat the meal with you when it's hot, whatever. For them, it means that you don't barge in on them. You knock on the door and you say, it's Daddy, do you mind if I come in? You don't just think that it's like your house, so you can go in there whenever you want. And you have to have those agreed upon norms. And if you do, then there's something to talk about when those norms get broken, because you've spoken about it, you've agreed on it, and it's not a surprise. And so I found that works very well in houses. we actually, in our work, in companies and in schools, we have what we call the emotional intelligence charter. And so it's just like, how do we want to feel as a family? Loved, valued, respected, happy. Well, what does that look like? What does it look like for you, my son? What does it look like for me? And just define it, have the conversation about it. And it's just like people, oh my God, that's so much work. Like this is like, blah, blah, blah. First it takes it's over one dinner. Like most of the time you're going to be on your phones at dinner anyway. This is actually a good connection activity. Secondly, just why not be clear about what makes you go crazy and what makes you feel respected or disrespected, and talk about it. And that way your kid understands it. And then you also show curiosity about what their needs are. And then you come to an agreement. And then if you break it, then you have something to talk about.
Yeah.
Does that resonate at all?
It does. It does. Being curious, again, checking my own. How would secure Kevin respond? How would mature Kevin respond?
Yeah.
How would emotionally regulated Kevin respond? And it's not forfeit. I've done that. We're back to avoidance. It's not, blow up. I'm looking at, how can I retain connection? If I don't have, I used to say the word influence, but I like connection better. But if I don't retain that, I feel like I've got nothing. And well, to your statement of, oh my gosh, how much work is that to do that? If I'm talking about a teen kid, for instance, I say, man, the work of dealing with a rebellious teen kid is harder work than anything. I'll far more choose over here and trying to retain, again, however we, emotional intelligence, emotional regulation.
Sure.
Yeah.
But gosh, where was I going to go with this in terms of the norms? I think that we're so intervention focused in society and not prevention focused that if we spend time thinking about these things and how we really wanted to feel at home and what we needed to feel that way, we see a lot less rebellion, because we'd have, it would be talked out and agreed upon. The other thing that you're bringing up for me, and when you were talking about, being kind of your best self, that's my book, as you know, culminates with that, because my vision and my dream is that people identify as humans who are skilled at emotion regulation. I got this idea from a fitness trainer who I started working out much more heavily. I've always been active, but during the pandemic, I got a little chunky and a little lazy, and I ate a lot of junk food, which is not really like me, but it just happened. And so I decided, like, Mark, enough is enough. You're getting back into your shape. And I was talking to this fitness instructor, and I never really was like a weightlifter. I was more of like karate and, like physical activity, but not like pump and iron and like deadlifts and, stuff like that. Anyhow, I decided that it was time for me to to lift weights. And the first couple of months, I'm like, Mark, you're 50 years old. You're a psychologist. Nobody cares how you look. You've been married for 30 years. Like, really? Like, why? Like, what are you doing these exercises for? This is ridiculous. I mean, I had such negative self-talk. I also wasn't seeing changes quickly enough for my liking. That was a hard part. I had to really work on my self-talk during that time. Then in phase 2, I was like, oh, I've actually lost some of that weight, feeling toner. Now I'm in phase 3, which is that I actually cannot go without working out. I actually cannot not work out. It makes me crazy when I miss my workouts. And it's because now I identify as a human being who is someone who lifts weights, who does very intentional activities that way. I'm hoping that people have the same process for emotion regulation. In the beginning, it is very tough, and you're going to fail constantly. You're going to have this conversation with your kid about respect, and then your kid's going to go, blank yourself, Daddy. I'm not showing that respect today. And then you're going to call me up and you're going to say, Mark, I tried it. It didn't work. And I'll be like, Kevin, try it 15,000 more times. And then it starts working. And then you revise it, and then you're like, oh gosh, respect is not really a thing anymore in our house. We're doing really well with that. But now we want to have more fun. And so we're thinking about how ways we can bond and like collaborate and have more fun times. And then eventually it just becomes who you are. And I think my dream is that people will see that building their emotional intelligence skills is worth it because you're going to be healthier, happier, more effective in all aspects of your life. But it's hard for people to see that when they've never been taught it, and it's like it feels so far away. And so you got to learn it, you got to practice it, and just keep on going after it. And eventually, if it becomes part of your identity, just to give you one example more about that. So at this point in my life, because this is my life, my work, I love it when people trigger me. It's like I love it. It's like a thing. It's like, Mark, you're going to be challenged. This is like it's like a fitness challenge, but it's more of a mental creativity challenge for me in terms of regulation. So I'm like, someone, you denigrate me, you can say something, you can say I don't like you anymore, whatever it is, and I take my breath and I'm like, what's the open-ended question that I can ask this person to get them to reflect on the way they just treated me? And so I think of it as a game, and I no longer struggle with it. Does that make any sense to you?
It does. I'm going to be thinking about how I can offend you before we're done talking here. Just so you can do that. You said the words I identify as. I really like that, Mark. I help myself with it of going, I'm the kind of guy who exercises. I'm the kind of guy who eats clean. I'm the guy. It's not just something I do. Go ahead.
No, and I'm the kind of guy who regulates his I'm the kind of guy who regulates his emotions in ways, that supports his well-being.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I can't believe I waited this long for this topic. I mentioned it a little bit, but here's where I'm going to anchor.
Okay.
My concern with the willingness to take that much responsibility. The word I like is personal agency for my feelings. I perceive a pretty volatile culture that we have. If it's the news headlines, if it's social media, if it's, politics, whatever it feels, we use that word a lot, polarized, that we're more and more polarized. We know the stats on anxiety seem to be increasing continually. And to bring this in, almost like an unpopular thing. One of my best friends is a functional medicine doctor, and he's like, man, it's really hard to sell fasting. Nobody wants to fast. I don't want to fast. You don't want to fast. Nobody wants to fast. And yet we just got the data. It provides, a great thing. So over here to say, man, if you will take responsibility for not as you said, not that you feel something, that's great, but how you respond. Again, we're back to, I feel like, selling the value, kind of the hard work of taking responsibility. And yet there feels let me own it. I have some understanding for sometimes, especially when you do feel wronged, you do feel victimized, you feel it's unjust. Now, I don't want to take responsibility. You did that. They did that. It did that. And yet I'm the one here suffering. I'm the one here suffering when somebody I perceive cut me off in traffic and I'm back here fuming, about to have a panic attack or about to, run them down. And it's some old dude who's whistling to music and has no idea. And I'm the one suffering. What's my option here? But so me to take responsibility is just that, Mark, long way of saying that it feels like that's some of a primary challenge and it's even offensive to some people. Like, seriously? I'm not taking that.
Well, we see this all the time. I wrote an article that came out in Time magazine a couple of weeks ago, and I got blasted for it because I didn't. Time magazine titled it, and they were provocative. They called it the overreaction epidemic.
Wow, interesting.
And I thought my article was good. I still think it's good. I still stand by what I wrote. But people said to me, well, now, and the way things are in America, we're not overreacting. We need to react stronger and harder and, fight back more. And I don't disagree with that, but they're misunderstanding the point that I'm not saying to not fight for the injustice. I'm saying make sure you take care of yourself along the way. You don't want to crumble on that journey towards trying to achieve the goals that
Can
you
I
have.
interrupt and give you and use your words?
Yeah.
Right out of your book? You just said, maybe we do need to react harder, but your book, you would say we need to respond constructively.
Yeah.
And I love that. Because you're not saying let it go, minimize it. You're saying, no, it's big, but.
And it doesn't mean you're a doormat. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
you're allowing the oppressor to, have power over you. But you do have to realize at some point or another what control you have and what you don't have control over. And I think that we have an illusion sometimes that we have, or not an illusion. Let me take that back. We get distracted by the macro level things that have to change in order for us to feel better. And I think that's not a good use of time.
Will you unpack that, the macro, unpack that for me?
I'm depressed because climate change. That's a macro level thing. Now, does climate change, some people have their opinions about it. If you're upset about it, should you be upset about it? Yeah, of course, if that's how you feel, you feel. And, I think it's important. But fighting climate change, I'm like one person. Like, I don't know, how much can I really do? But can I recycle more in my home? Can I take care of my community better? Can I have things that I do in the city that I live in? I can. And will that help? I think, because then maybe we can be a role model for other cities, and that can grow and kind of grow like a positive, healthy metastasis. I prefer people, I hope people, I think people get lost in the macro and they're endlessly angry and endlessly feeling despair because they really don't have the control, and they're fighting for that control and the change that they don't have any power to change anyway. When they do have the power and the control to do their micro community, which then can be a role model for another community, and to me, we'll get better benefits if we do that.
Well, and as you're saying that, even if you did have the power, what I hear you saying is the volatile reaction's not going to help. Chances are it won't be constructive, but I like the words conscious, sober, intelligent response has the best chance. So take a deep breath, Kevin. Don't avoid, suppress, forfeit, vent, whatever, but what would be constructive? So in that, I got another question with responsibilities. In the taking responsibility, again, I like personal agency, but for my response, like you said, doesn't mean being a doormat and letting it go. It may be, well, again, I'll own it. For me, that's also been taking responsibility, agency for actually having a boundary,
Mm-hmm.
a conscious, healthy boundary that I didn't have in the past either, and having that. So it's not because in talking about this, I've had people, I see them get concerned about that. I'm saying, oh, you just let everything go. Okay, Mark, you don't anger me. I anger me in response to you. So you're okay, whatever you do. Okay, that's not it. That's not it. It's also up to me to say, you know what? I'm not okay with that. I don't think I'm going to talk with you anymore, or XYZ.
I agree. The thing that you're making me think about is, in my martial art, there was a phrase: "The angry man will lose himself in life and in battle."
Wow.
And I would say the dysregulated angry person, the anger is not what will make you lose. It's the poor strategy in dealing with the anger that will make you lose in life and in battle. And so the martial arts are a great example for me in terms of how we need to regulate. Because if I'm fighting someone who is more skillful than I am, I will feel fear.
Mm.
I'm at risk. If someone's like a foot taller than I am and like has arms that are twice the length and thicker than mine, that punch is going to hurt.
Yeah.
If I am sparring that person and I am feeling intense anxiety and I'm not doing my breath control and stilling my mind, that person is going to win no matter what, because they will know when I'm distracted because of my dysregulation and find that moment to strike.
Yeah.
And so I think that like it's hard for people to argue with me on that. Somehow the sports examples seem to be the best examples than like relationship ones.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's not about the emotion. And I say this again, which is as someone who has lived with and experienced quite a bit of anxiety in his life, for years I thought the anxiety would always win. And like it's just powerful. The emotion had power over me. And then I learned emotional intelligence, and I learned, even writing my book, honestly, like my first book, Permission to Feel, I felt like healed my childhood. It's just amazing to me. I wrote it, and I'm giving myself and everyone else in the world permission to feel, and I felt free. Um, this book, my theory is that you don't know anything until you can write it. That's just my philosophy. And I talk a lot about this stuff, but then I was like, do I really know what I'm talking about? Do I really know the science of this particular strategy? And so when I wrote it, I felt like, oh, now I understand it better. And then I kind of outlined all the strategies for people. And then I started saying, Mark, are you using these strategies? Like, are you living this? Like you just showed through the research what all the regulation strategies are that are research based, that are effective. What's your, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much are you applying these to your life? And so I started realizing I needed to apply some more than others. I just share that with you because it radically transformed my relationships to my anxiety. All of a sudden, I had all these tools available to me to shift, my anxiety, or just to accept it and say, some days when I'm anxious, I'm just sort of like, oh, hi, how you doing today? Great to see you. And then it goes away. Other days I need to call a friend. Other days I need to work on, Mark, you have no control over this. Gotta let it go. The interesting thing to me about this work, which makes it so different from other kind of sciences, is that it's not exact. It's time of day, it's day of week, it's who you're with, it's what you're feeling, it's when you're feeling it. And that's how you'll determine what strategy is best.
You just said a second ago, you said my relationship with my anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I continue to ruminate right there with all this, my connection to myself, my connection with Kevin. And if I can't be aware, and again, I like the word sober, I'm in jeopardy. But if I can, just as you said, understand my relationship with me, my relationship with these anxieties, that feels hopeful. Yeah.
Again, we have way more quote unquote control over the way we respond to these stimuli, going back to the Viktor Frankl quote. It's just that none of us have been taught the strategies. And so if you don't know what to do with the feeling, then the feeling will win, especially if it's a strong, intense, unpleasant one. If you learn how to deactivate, if you learn to label it properly, if you learn how to shift your thinking and find those support systems, your emotions are used wisely to help you achieve that well-being in life.
Okay, you brought his name up again. I'm going to read it one more time. Forces beyond your control can take away everything you possess except one thing: your freedom to choose how you will respond to the situation. Because Mark, mentioning hope, my thought is if I don't agree and accept that, it's pretty hard to be hopeful. And we seem to be at a time of significant lack of hope. Fair?
It is, because again, we don't feel like we can control our environments. That control is an illusion for many of us and for most of our lives. It'll be something else. I can't control the fact that my mother died when I was 24 of pancreatic cancer. I can't control the fact that, the girl I thought I was going to marry in high school dumped me and cheated on me. I can't control the fact, that I didn't get into Yale for my PhD. I wanted all these things and, et cetera. I didn't want certain things to happen. But, the control is what oftentimes makes our lives really difficult. And if we can get rid of that need for control, I think we'd be a lot healthier and happier. And if we can learn the strategies, I think we'll be even better off. And just in response to your last point, I mean, it's interesting. Ruminating is dreadful. I don't know. Have you ever ruminated?
Yep.
It's like the worst experience, isn't it? You just replay. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. Oh my God, nobody likes me. Nobody wants to be around me. I hate my life. I'm never going to be smart. I'm never going to be successful. Nothing ever works for me. I mean, you can go on and on and on about it. We could spend hours ruminating. If someone thinks that's what they want to do with their lives, I'd be surprised. I'd be surprised if someone would say, yes, that's my goal. I want to stay stuck and spiraling down and be miserable. And so what people don't realize is that it doesn't have to be that way. That I can take a deep breath and I can think a different way. I didn't know that growing up. I had no clue. So I was so hard on myself and so just lonely and isolated, and would just think the world would never, accept me for who I was and what I wanted to be. And then I learned these strategies, and it completely transformed the way I think about everything. And when I'm like at an airport and the flight gets canceled, and I love watching people at the airport. It's like the best, because I have become the best friend of every flight attendant. They love me because I just show them love. I'm like, I watch when people like are so disrespectful, like, this airline sucks, and this is the effing last time I'm gonna fly this plane, and get me on that plane, And I just a quick story about this. So
Yeah.
recently, actually in Denver, I was in Denver airport, and I was supposed to go someplace to give a speech, and the flight got canceled. And then I'm like, I tried everything. I'm a million miler. I'm like, I have power. I've got connections. I'm calling the airlines, and I'm in the lounge, and the woman says to me, sorry, like, you got to call the airline. I'm like, why? Like, why can't you do it? Nope, can't do it. And I'm like, okay. Call the guy, and I call the guy. He's giving me a hard time. He's like, I don't know if we can change your flight. I don't understand why you can't change my flight. Like, I'm in Denver. I'm definitely not getting to my destination. I want to go home. And he's like, well, there's no flights back to where you left. You can't, blah, blah, blah. Oh, this whole story. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I could have lost it. Everybody in the airport was losing it, like out of their minds. I go down to the gate where I know there's one flight left to go back, not to the place where I took off, but it was New York, so I could have gone to a different airport. I see the flight attendant. She's out of her mind. Everybody's screaming, yelling, because they're all trying to get on this flight. And I went up to him like, I see you're having a really, really, really difficult time. I'm so sorry. I don't want to be, intrusive right now, but I've had the worst day ever, and I was told that I cannot get on this flight. And I just feel like there has to be a way. Is there any way that you might be able to figure out a way so I can get home tonight? And she's like, give me a minute. And I said, I deeply appreciate anything you can do. Anyway, point is, she got me home. And I just watched so many people walking away pissed because they didn't get the help they needed, because nobody wants to help people who are dysregulated. Do you follow? Like, I knew that it was my superpower with empathy, compassion, and just, I wasn't being manipulative. I was being sincere. And of course I sent her a copy of my book.
Awesome.
But my point about that is that it's a choice. Like, it is a choice to be the jerk at the airport. And by the way, nothing you say or do to the flight attendant is going to make that plane take off. So why are you working yourself up and getting so miserable when, and by the way, I'm going on and on about this, but it's because it so happens to me, is the days that I don't get what I want, I sit in a seat, I take a few deep breaths, and I think, okay, Mark, so you're not getting home. This is life. What can you do to build the space? Oh my God, there's a museum I haven't gone to. Oh my God, I can actually work on a chapter in my book. Oh my God, I can go watch television. I never watch television. And if you just pause and think about, like, how can I use this time creatively and wisely? All of a sudden you realize it doesn't suck that bad. It's not like, life. And a year from now, you're not going to be like, oh my God, I had the worst day of my life because I got stuck one night in the airport. So my point is, there are real strategies that can help people better regulate, and you got to learn them, you got to practice them, and I promise you, it makes your life better.
That's why I'm sitting. As you mentioned uncertainty, lack of control. There's so much that we can't, but the best chance for the best outcome is as you did with that flight attendant. Because even if she hadn't gotten you on the plane, at least you regulated yourself. You gave her the best response she could get, and you get to go to the museum.
And she also was so appreciative that I was kind to her.
Yeah.
And so I felt good. Like I felt like I gave her a little dose of kindness, which she was desperately needing.
Well, and you've got a chapter where you go, hey, can we do a 3-hour show? Because you talk about co-regulation. You helped co-regulate her.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Marc, it ultimately feels, I feel like landing on hope. This is an opportunity for hope. When we can't control everything out there, when things are uncertain, which they're going to be, the one thing, all the external stuff, it is. But I'm here, and my best chance, my best hope is me. And I'm just grateful. Thanks for doing what you're doing.
And one last thing I just want to say about, and just because you'll be better at solving the larger world problems that are bothering you if you are more compassionate to yourself and are better regulated. You'll be more creative. You'll be a better problem solver. You'll get more people on your bus. And so again, it's so important for me because people criticize the work on emotion regulation because they think it's about, not making change. It is the opposite of that. It is about supporting your health and wellness so that you can make more change happen.
And I hear you to what you said earlier on macro. I just wrote down that my best chance to change the big issues, the macro, to have an influence there is to deal with the micro, me. Fair?
Exactly.
Okay. Quote by Marc. I'll just give you credit for that one. Thank you. Thank you I get that from you. Man, again, thank you. Thanks for this time. Thanks for the message. I'm grateful that you put the book out, and I'm grateful I got this time with you for my own benefit that I'll take to the dinner table with the kids. And then I actually have an audience to give it to as well. So I'm a grateful evangelist. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for joining us in this discussion. That again is Marc, M-A-R-C, Brackett. And the book that was my muse for the conversation here is Dealing with Feeling. Use your emotions to create the life you want. Till next time, here is to the evolving you.
Yeah.